Pprom happened at 15 weeks. So it was really weird because typically after the first trimester, after 12 weeks, you feel like you're in the clear, everything's good. At least that's what I heard. I mean, this was my first pregnancy, so from everything that I heard before, it's like after the first 12 weeks, you're good, you're in there, nothing really happens after that. So after that, I told everyone, when we hit about 13 weeks, I told everybody that I was pregnant. I was very excited because, of course, nothing can go wrong. After 12 weeks, this is what I was thinking. We got to 15 weeks, and everything was normal. So I was home in the bed one day, and I was just watching TV. It was the middle afternoon, and I was just watching TV in the bed by myself. My husband was downstairs just doing whatever he was doing, I guess hanging out with himself, I don't know. So I felt like a strong stomach pain, like maybe what you would consider like a cramp or a stomach cramp, not like a pregnancy cramp, not like a menstrual cycle cramp. It was more in the more upwards, so I would call it some type. It was like a stomach pain, and it was like a now, briefly, really quick, I had experienced these pains before pregnancy. I always had some type of stomach issues, you know. My stomach wasn't always the best, and stomach would hurt often, so it wasn't nothing irregular for me to feel like a stomach pain here or there. So let me say that for you, not to think that it had something to do with it, because I don't. We're not going to speculate. I'm just going to tell the story exactly how it is. So, felt a stomach pain. At the end of the pain, I felt like a leak, and I was like, did I just pee on myself? At first I was like, did I just pee on myself? Is that like a pregnancy symptom that people pee on themselves? And it was just a little bit, so I was like, maybe not. And I'm just still watching TV, and then I turned, and when I turned, I felt more leakage come out. I'm like, is that pee? Am I peeing on myself? So I went to the restroom, and I'm like, is this pee? And I'm trying to, I smelled it to see if it was pee. I was like, it doesn't smell like pee. And I'm like, did my water break? And I was like, I don't know if that's fluid or if that's pee. So I'm like, okay, maybe not. I walked back to the room. From the bathroom, and more fluid started coming. Like it started, like more came to the point where I knew, okay, I'm not peeing, like, because it was more fluid than usual, and it was, starting to stop. And so I'm like, okay, I'm not peeing. So I called my husband. He did not answer. And I know he's downstairs, so I called him again, and then he was like, hey, he told me he was on a conference call. He was like, what's up, babe? I'm on a conference call. Can I call you back? I'm like, no, you cannot call me back. We need to go to the hospital ASAP. I'm leaking. My water is breaking. I mean, my water broke. I don't know if I said my water broke, but I said I'm leaking a lot of fluid. I'm leaking. And he's like, okay. Well, he didn't say okay. He was like, what? He was very frantic. So we went in the car. The whole time I'm in the car, I changed my pants when we got to the car, but by the time I got to the car, I was still leaking all over it. We pulled up in front of the hospital. The hospital is about 15 minutes away from my house. So we pulled up emergency in front of the hospital, and I remember, of course, this was like towards the beginning of COVID, so my husband could not get out the car with me. I went up, and it was people before you even went into the emergency part of the hospital. People were standing outside already asking what you needed, because of course it was like towards the beginning of COVID. And I was like, I'm leaking and I'm pregnant, and they were asking, how many weeks are you? And I remember when she asked me that, I said 15, but I started crying when I said it, and she couldn't understand what I was saying. And I said 15, and then I just started crying more. And then I walked in the emergency room, and they just told me to stand to the side because I told them what was going on, and they told me to stand to the side. As I was standing to the side, I'm standing there, and water is just falling, just coming, and I don't even know what to do. And they put me in a wheelchair, and they're like, give us a second. They took my name and my birthday and my insurance card, and then they rolled me to the back. It was other people waiting in the emergency room too, but of course, I guess since my situation, they took me before everyone else. They took me to the back of the emergency room. When I got there, I was in a wheelchair, so they wheeled me to a bed, and they asked me to get up on the bed. And when I was in the chair, and when I lifted my body like that, I just felt a gush. And this was a bigger gush than I had felt from the time it broke up until this point. It was just so much. And I'm like, it's gonna be wet, and they're like, it's okay, just get up. And it was so emotional that I was crying a lot. And I stood up, and it was just like a faucet, like all on the wheelchair, on the hospital floor. I hadn't even made it to the emergency room bed. So then I got in the emergency room bed, and in my head I'm like, what's going on? I'm losing this baby. I'm gonna lose the baby. What is happening? I think the baby must be gone. Like, I must have miscarried. The water have broke. This is what I'm thinking in my head. And then they just ask me my OBGYN's name and things like that, and they call her. I didn't see any nurses or any doctors at the emergency room. They didn't really do anything to me. From my recollection, they gave me a COVID test. But other than that, just in case they said I had to be admitted, they gave me a COVID test at emergency. But other than that, they didn't really do anything. They called my doctor, and my doctor told them to do an ultrasound. That's what they said. So I was sitting in emergency, and I was waiting for the ultrasound people to come. So they came. He asked me how many weeks I was. They did the machine, da-da-da-da-da. And I'm just looking at him to see, you always look at them to see any feedback. They say, oh, I can't tell you nothing because the doctor has to tell you. Okay. So I'm looking at him. Of course, you always try to look for safe facial expressions to see. But, I mean, those people are great. They don't give you no facial expressions. So he does the ultrasound, the gentleman, and then he says, good luck, and then he leaves. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. He said, good luck. What does that even mean? Oh, my gosh. They just need to tell me my baby's gone now. And the whole time I'm on speakerphone with my husband, I was freaking out because of COVID test, because it was the beginning of COVID. I never had it done, and everything that I had seen online, before you ever got a COVID test done, okay, they scared us all with it. So I was scared in that. Okay, jump back to that. I was like, okay, I was still in the emotions. Okay, then they call my doctor again after the ultrasound is done. They bring a phone to me, so apparently it looks like the old mobile house phones that used to have, the cordless house phones. It looked like that in the emergency room, and I was like, your doctor's on the phone, they want to talk to you. I'm like, okay. So I get on the phone, and the lady that I spoke to wasn't even my doctor. She was a doctor on call from my doctor's office, but I was familiar with her name. So she was telling me that the baby still had a heartbeat, and the baby was still alive. And I was shocked because I hadn't thought for sure that wasn't the case. So I was happy in that moment. I was very happy in that moment. And she said, but the fluid looks completely gone. Well, not completely. They said I had a little bit. And I was like, okay. And they were like, even though the baby's alive, the baby's lungs cannot develop without any fluid, and you're 15 weeks along, which means they haven't really developed at all, pretty much. So she said she was going to order some fluid through an IV and try to see if it'll rebuild my fluid, because sometimes she said if it's a little hole, sometimes we can rebuild it, sometimes we can't. So she admitted me and she wanted me to rebuild the fluid. Okay, so eventually they put me in a real room at the hospital and they put me on IV to try to see if we can build my fluid. Now, first of all, okay, the hospital definitely took about another 4 hours before I even got any fluid. Okay, and I kept asking them, but that's a whole nother story. So the doctor came back the next day. I would say it was about 24 hours, and the doctor came back and they did another ultrasound, and she said nothing was rebuilt. Like the fluid did not build back up, which was devastating. And she said we can try another day, because the baby in the second ultrasound, the baby's still alive and moving and everything. And I'm like, let's try another day. So, okay, we wait another day. The doctor comes back and she's like, it's not, I'm sorry, it's not rebuilding. It doesn't look like it's gonna rebuild. I was devastated at that point. Then I'm like, okay, well, okay. And she said pretty much they recommended that I do a DNC. And at that point, like I told you, this is my first pregnancy. I have no idea what a DNC is. I'm like, a DNC? And they were like, yeah, which is pretty much the process of cleaning you out, which is pretty much terminating the pregnancy, because at this point the baby's lungs will not develop, and it was a little fluid there, a little tiny fluid. So they said for whatever reason, if the baby does make it miraculously with the little amount of fluid you have, the baby can have a numerous amount of problems. But they requested that I do a DNC, and I was just like, Or they said you can, no, they said to do a DNC or to just wait it out. And I told her I just wasn't sure about what I was planning on doing. And she told me that that was fine. Okay, sorry. So she said that that would be fine. That I go home and to think about it, and let her know. So she wanted to see me every 2 days. They discharged me from the hospital, and she wanted to see me 2 days afterwards. So I talked to my husband about it. We went back and forth about it. I talked to my mom, my family, a little bit of friends about it. I went back 2 days later. They did another ultrasound in the doctor's office, and same thing. Fluid was the same. Nothing more lost. Nothing more lost, but nothing more gained. And it was only a little bit. The doctor still suggested DNC at that point, because she seemed adamant that the baby would not have she seemed adamant that the baby would not have a good quality of life. So she did suggest it in her professional opinion. I couldn't do it. Because when I went to the hospital when my water broke, and when I went to the doctor's office, now I had to go to the doctor's office every 2 days since then, due to how specific the situation was. I couldn't do it. I had to go to the doctor's office every 2 days due to how specific the situation was. And when I went every 2 days, I would see my baby, and I would see my baby move. regardless of the lack of fluid, my baby was moving, and the heartbeat was strong. And then I started researching things about Pprom and babies making it, and I couldn't do it because if other people's baby made it, and especially some I seen Pprom was at 11 weeks, and I had mine at 15, and I was like, if other babies made it, I have to wait it out. It would be easier if like there was no heartbeat or anything else like that, but knowing that the baby still was there and the heartbeat was there and the baby was still moving, I could not